Welcome back to Healing in Spanglish. It's episode 18, and it's your hosts, Metzli and Inshel, your Boyle Heights besties, figuring out what wellness looks like for us and our people.
So let's get real about healing in all the ways we weren't taught but deeply deserve. So the theme for today is talking about political apathy and specifically how it's been affecting our communities and why sometimes our families and our communities choose to distrust in the government due to a lot of generational trauma and systems that have historically excluded our people, our needs. So we're going to be diving into that. Also with the election coming up June 2nd.
Which is tomorrow by the time this video comes out.
Yes. We really just want to have real conversations about why it's important, sometimes why locally has more of an impact on our own very own communities. We'll talk about what positions are up right now, as well as kind of some of the things and tools and tips that we use to research candidates that are currently running for state office.
Yeah, because right now it's probably the height in time where everyone's getting ads and you're seeing a bunch of them and you're getting mixed signals and social media is taking over, and it's very confusing and very hard to feel connected to it when there's so much clashing information you're getting. So that's the importance of why I want to talk about it. Even if this time around it feels new, there's still one coming up in November. So another chance to still participate and understand how it might be affecting you directly. And with that said, we are going to do our weekly check-in of the week. First, we're going to start with our Spanglish word of the week, which in the theme of us talking sort of about the larger level of politics, the word we chose is politica, which I think is always such a cute word. And I feel like nowadays people use that word for events as in an empowering sense, for women, obviously, politica specifically. I don't know, I like it. I think it's cute, politica. And I feel like it's being used more and more as a empowering way of someone or people wanting to get together for, advocacy or just reasons of empowerment and talking about things like that. So yeah, politica, cute little word. And then we're going to also do our mini healing confession. So what is it that you're working on this week?
I am working on going to more community events. I feel like I used to do it a lot, but now I kind of let it go just because I've been so busy. But every time I go, I'm my cup is full again. Okay. So yeah, just working on making sure I have designated time to go.
Yeah. I feel like you do go, but maybe it's not,
not as often,
but especially your Sunday journaling with
my mom.
No, Sunday journaling that you go to.
Oh yeah, but
you haven't been going that much.
I haven't because of work. I've worked multiple weekends. Yeah.
Okay. That's tea. Okay, I'm just kidding. Well, that's great to hear. I love community events.
I know.
They definitely fill the cup for the day. The thing I'm working on is something that I shared on the last episode, but because I have my ankle fracture and I'm on crutches, boot, scooter lifestyle right now. Quite literally listening to my body of what it's telling me. I am forcefully by the universe being told to slow down and rest. And so this has definitely given me a chance to force myself to not really have a choice in walking and running and moving as much as I'd like to. And so in turn, that also makes me focus on some other things. So I'm trying to take advantage of the time that I'm laying a lot of the time to work on some things that I have been neglecting a little bit.
Yeah. Props to you.
Trying. Yeah. It's hard.
It's a hard pill to swallow when you're on the go and you just have no choice.
You would know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yours is worse.
I know, but I'm really trying to make the most out of it. I'm still producing content, like I said.
Yeah. Scooter content. Yeah. I love that. On a more lighthearted note, I'm kind of curious, when was the first time in your life that you actually started caring slightly about politics, or when did it really come up for you?
Yeah, I think the first time, and with politics, I sort of just attached the government, my understanding of the government in general. The first time definitely was pretty early on, I think, maybe more compared to a lot of people in elementary school, where because I was in the foster care system, I was a part of the child welfare system, I was directly affected by the government and what happens when a child is taken away from their home and what the system is that you go through, dealing with social workers, then being moved and having to go to court. And so early on, and probably, I don't know what grade I was, but I was 9 years old. And I was the oldest of my 3 siblings. I feel like I really had to understand it to understand what was going on for, with us. So I would say that's the first time I ever was exposed to it, and then was curious once I was reunited with my parents to understand why this happened. And according to my mom too, it was a mismanagement of our case as well, because my mom could have taken care of us, but there's so much complexity to how the system works and how it could affect you. And so nonetheless, I feel like that inspired me to want to understand government, because I was directly affected by it and I know how hard it was. So I wanted to also see what are the ways or things that I can advocate for foster youth, for people who might experience some similarities like this, and help protect them and help make sure that, because I felt like there was so much injustice in some of the things I had to deal with, such as I couldn't go live with another family member because they didn't have a boy room and a girl room. And so there's certain regulations and rules in order for you to live with a family member. So it was just like this whole complex thing that I was like, why would this be the way it is? So that's what kind of sparked my curiosity. And then going into middle school, I was part of student government and then youth in government and the YMCA. And I really was dedicated and really dove deep into foster care reform. So that's where I first got exposed, sort of by force, but I felt responsible afterwards because I was one of the lucky ones to actually get out of the system.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Yeah. I don't know much at all. So
it's a whole,
and I just know it's really fucked.
Yeah. This is a lot. What about you? What's the first time?
I am sorry. I don't feel like I could go after that. I would say it was, high school, I think.
Yeah. Which is more typical, I would say.
Yeah. It was U.S. history. Well, when I was learning about your history, it was just I was infuriated. I just had a lot of rage because you learn about all the fucked up shit you do. And then the teachers were like, yeah, but there's still stuff you can do. And then I went to AP Gov, which was basically what lit everything for me. Yeah. She was so great about us being involved and how to I learned the word apathy because of her. And I was like, God.
Maybe you could explain the word apathy.
Yeah, well, apathy is just not caring about most things. You can use it in any way, but specifically when you talk about politics, it's just kind of having a distrust, not caring, kind of just leaving it there and really not immersing yourself. Yeah. So I think that was a first wake up call where I was learning more about the government here and how it can affect us. Because I think before that my parents didn't care to teach me anything, and then that was it. And then from there I was like, oh shit, maybe I should pay attention to everything happening.
Yeah. Well, you just sort of said something that I think sparks a little bit of us going back to childhood, because you said that your parents didn't care to talk to you about politics. So I'm curious where that comes from, or why you think your parents didn't feel the need to talk to you about it, or if they even understood it themselves.
Yeah, well, I think it was a mix of the language barrier and also just the history of them coming from Guatemala, because in Guatemala there was a very well-known now genocide of Mayan indigenous people. And so from that, I think my parents were very early, maybe 3 or 4 years old, after that had happened. So they grew up with a really strong, horrible dictatorship government where they were still recovering from everything that happened. And I think my parents just knew that there was always a lot of US involvement in Guatemala, and that's why so many of our lands were exploited, why so many politicians are corrupt and stealing from them, because there's somehow US involvement. So I think that was definitely what my parents understood of the country here.
Fuck them.
Yeah, so they're why the
so much harm.
Yeah, exactly. So I think for that it's very layered in that sense. And Guatemala has just never really had a good president. For the most part, they've all been corrupt. So I think my parents just didn't trust the government, which by all means, as they should,
for good reason.
And so I think when they came here, they were just kind of whatever's, and also they were surviving. So I don't think they had capacity to be able to focus on those things. But it definitely was a lot of the distrust of US involvement in Guatemala. And so my parents didn't tell me anything, and so I was just kind of whatever's, fuck politicians, they're all the same shit. They all just feed you fucking lies. So I think it was that. It wasn't they didn't believe that we can make an impact somehow, but they just chose not to focus on it.
Of course. That makes sense.
What about you? What was your upbringing like?
And it's very different in the sense that obviously your parents dealt with the language barrier, which I think is one of the biggest things that prevents people from being able to understand these systems, because they're so complex. They have their own terminology and language that I could barely fucking understand, So imagine someone who is still trying to learn the language itself, But both my parents were born here in LA. They're from Boyle Heights, East LA area. So they're sort of like the OG Chicano Chicana time. And so a little bit different of an experience where they had me really young. So I also kind of grew up seeing them also a part of different movements that were happening. Right. And so in some weird way, it was like, yes, same wavelength in terms of like, did not feel like the government could do anything for us, any good, because they've done so much harm already. And they also themselves, my grandmas, my grandparents also were highly affected by the system here and back in Mexico. So they too carried what, you're saying, which is, well, look what they've done to my parents and people from our home country. Yeah, why would we trust them? So there was this part of them that like definitely did not feel like they could do any good for us. But there was also the part of them where I saw my mom especially really involved in different movements that were happening. Like she lived in Texas for a while. Like,
your mom's so cool.
Yeah, she is. She was a part of like the Zapatista movement and what was happening there in Texas because of the borderline in Mexico, trying to help families there. And so she was really involved in what people were trying to like build people powered wise, community led work in trying to help people without the use of the systems that exist, and wanted to do it like grassroots. And so I think in some ways like she was sort of involved, but I think sometimes we only think of it as like
a linear
like the government, like the system that's set up that we see and know about most. But there's also this other whole part that I think she was very political. And so I grew up, and I even tell people this, like I went to an indigenous elementary school that took us on field trips to protests. So I also feel like I sort of saw the importance of it early on, of at least being politically aware and active, but nonetheless still had a ton of distrust. That never went away, but I was exposed to maybe more of like the work that people were doing like on the ground.
That's pretty cool.
So I'm also curious, when growing up, like when was the first time, or what did your parents do when elections came around? Did they participate? Did they not? Obviously we know they had distrust in it, but what was sort of their like process coming into it? And then also curious, like when was the first time you voted, and why did you decide to do that?
Why did I vote? Well, I think when it was 2008 when Obama was running, I think my parents were really excited about that, and because it was a very historic moment, the first Black president that we were ever going to have. And so I remember that was my most vivid memory. We were in the living room, like watching it live on TV and while it was happening. So I think that was my very first memory. And I think it gave a little bit of a sliver of hope to my parents, even though I know he's like,
Right. He has
his own things, right? Not to say that, my parents, I think, were just happy to see some
representation.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say those are my very like early memories when it comes to like, I guess, presidential elections. And then I first voted in 2018, maybe. There's a 16. No,
you couldn't vote that year.
I voted while I was in college. I don't know what I was voting for though.
Yeah, probably 2018 or 2019.
2018. I was voting for something, but I do remember Trump being on the ballot. I do remember that. I'm sorry. I'm like the years are so mixed in, but
for sure,
that was the first time in college. But I don't know, like to some degree, it still felt like it just wasn't enough with just how bad things were at the time. But that was like the very first time that I was officially getting involved, and it felt crazy. I was like, whoa, like finally I can fucking do something about this. Is
that because when you did government, like AP government in high school, that then you learned like you wanted to participate in some way? Like was there any sort of curiosity about government beforehand, or was it until you had that class then you realized like I actually have that much I could have impact, and then sort of from there?
It was definitely that class. It was that class, a mixture of also our teacher who taught us English. It was definitely like that. What I learned in high school weighed really heavily on me, just knowing that like, I was in a privileged position to vote, which a lot of people don't have. So I knew that like if I have a right that can, somewhat impacts the communities that we live in, like why not take advantage of that? Yeah, because I think like realistically, like it really is sometimes lack of education. Like I only really cared because there was a teacher in my school that was like, no, you should really care about these things, right? And so because of that, I was like, you know what, let me at least practice this one thing I can do. Yeah, and I remember being really excited about it, posting on social media, and people being like, thank you so much for voting for like those that can't vote. So yeah, like I think like it's really important to still somewhat choose to get involved.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me that like in our community it's not normal to vote, especially if you are able to, because of the distrust we have and you know how layered it is. And in some places everybody votes.
I know,
like they all vote and they're so involved, especially like white old people. Like I was at an event recently and it was for a state senator representative who is running right now, and there's a lot of older white people there, and it was so crazy to me. Like I was like, dang, yeah, they're the ones who fucking vote, like no question every time. It was just funny to realize that, but I understand obviously why that's the case, but it just sucks because for me, the reason I decided to vote in the first place was because I also finally understood that if I don't vote because I don't feel like nothing's going to change with my vote, two things will happen. One, I'm going to leave it up to other people to then contribute to what they believe should be done for our communities. And also there's like this whole theory I learned about in government too, where I forget what it's called, but everyone thinks, my vote isn't going to matter because it's just one. And if we all have that thought that, well, my vote doesn't matter because everyone else will, we're all thinking the same thing. So then there's hundreds of thousands of us who decide that thought that, well, I'm not going to vote because everyone else is going to vote. We all think that, and then we all lose out on that amount of votes because we all have that mindset. So I just realized that when I learned that in government too, I was like, damn, yeah, that was my thought process. Or with other things too, right? Like, oh, I'm not going to do that because someone else will, or I don't need to donate to this org because other people will. But then a lot of people have that thought, and none of us end up being able to contribute the way that other communities are super involved. And because they've always benefited from it. And so point is, I too learned a lot in high school in that class, thankfully, to having really good teachers who taught me about the system in the way that felt empowering for me to get involved. But also it did start earlier on with the YMCA when I was in youth and government, and they actually let us go through the entire like bill process, and my bill was chosen to take forward. And so I went to Sacramento and I was able to go through the entire process, and it was about foster care reform. So I was very passionate about it. And I took it. And so they allowed me to understand the stages of government, take it to the full way, what it meant like to argue. I also was in mock trial in middle school. So I feel like I just had a lot of exposure because of foster care. I really wanted to see what else I could do about foster care and the way it was already existing and how bad and how unfortunate and like just disheartening the experience was. So I think I always knew like I wanted to be involved some way. So then going into college, I was like, well, I'm not going to let other people decide for me. I'm just one vote, but so are all of us in our community. And so together we could influence how votes shift, you know? And so, I think that's why I voted. And also because, you're right, Trump was on the ballot. And I was like, that's not going to happen. Like, I didn't want that to happen again. Obviously it did. It
was after COVID.
And so it was just unfortunate, but I did want to find ways to, like you said, just even if it was small, contribute to it as much as possible. And sorry, I didn't answer the first thing about like how my parents participated in votes. And honestly, I don't have recollection of them voting. I don't know if they ever involved me. Like I would have to ask them if they voted growing up, like them as, early 18-year-olds. I don't actually know because they never exposed. I don't remember. I don't have recollection of it. I feel like for sure my mom did, and I feel like my mom forced my dad. So and now my dad is like super, like if anything more on top of it now. Like my mom converted the man, but
converted is so funny.
But no, she really did.
No, it's true.
He was a priest boy. Like he was Yeah, he was a priest boy.
Like, what?
Complete. My dad said I had to get baptized because that was part of his like belief system, and you know, he grew up in a really religious family. And my mom compromised and said yes, but I'm the only one who was baptized because after that my dad switched, and that was it.
What? I never would have.
You know, he is the opposite of what he is now. Like that, it is possible for people to change. I have seen in my own father who, this man is like saying the craziest things about like conspiracy theories, you know, about the government, and it's just period. Yeah. All right, y'all. Now that we've given you sort of like a layer of our foundational understanding or involvement with the government, and maybe some of y'all have also experienced similar experiences with that, we also want to talk about, now that we understand the distrust and where we come from and how it might affect our relationship to the government, we also want to talk about now what we, even in this process of preparing for this episode, have learned about, and also ourselves understand policies and how the government directly affects our everyday lives here in Boyle Heights, on the east side in general, wherever you may be at. And so we want to talk a little bit about how, first of all, how does representation, or why does representation even matter in government in the first place? Like, why is that such a big deal?
Yeah, well, I think historically, the people who have made decisions for our communities and where we live is white men with power. So I think like representation matters a lot for us, because a lot of people were making decisions about the way of our living without having any clue about our needs. Yeah. And so now
never living here.
No, literally.
Never experiencing that.
Exactly. And so I think now it's really important, because a lot of what I've seen, at least with like local politicians, is a lot of them grew up in the communities. And I think that's very fundamental, because they themselves have been products of the systems, whether it's the education system, the environment. So yeah, I think it provides an extra layer of context for people when it comes to like writing policies or writing bills, because they themselves have had families and members who have been affected. So yeah, I think it's really important in that way, so that, you know, there's people that look like us, people who have experienced that. But yeah, I think it's just,
it does matter.
It does matter a lot, especially now that we can actually be in positions of power.
Yeah. And so with that as well, yes, you're so right. And I agree that it matters so deeply that we have people who not only look like us, but also understand us because they've lived here, or they've also held positions that give them a lot of insight into what it's like growing up in the communities, right? Like, I love when there's like former educators or environmentalists or community organizers. Not to say that that alone can make you qualified, but that you have had some level of experience of what an everyday person in our life might go through. And so some of the things we wanted to name that our community, especially living here in Boyle Heights, we are directly affected by, right? And so things like, let's say, the environmental injustice, housing, the housing crisis, rent, all of that stuff, transportation, how we get around in our community. We also have food injustice. We have green spaces and lack thereof, being able to go to parks safely and that are clean and taken care of. There's also our small businesses that we love and protecting them. There's our street vendors that we also love and protecting them and being able to work here. And a big one too that we've directly been affected by is education, of course.
Yes, can't forget that.
Yeah, and so all of those things are things that directly policymakers, government officials have control over. You know, they actually get a huge say into a lot of these things that directly affect us. So I'm curious for you, is there any things that you're especially passionate about that you've been directly affected by, that you're like, I cannot stand that, like, this is something we're still dealing with here in Boyle Heights, whether that be like environment, any of the things that I named that you feel like, I wish we had more of this, or this is such a huge problem that we still haven't solved? Because I think a lot of us probably think about this in our day-to-day, but don't connect how it might be affected by like government choices.
Well, I think for sure housing. Since I was in high school, I've seen like our community significantly change when it comes to like building more Section 8 and low income housing, specifically in like the Mariachi area. I know recently we've had 2 like apartment complexes build up. So I think a lot of vertical housing has been very beneficial to the community, because for so long we have seen like so many people getting pushed out, selling their homes. And then here comes like a fucking investor who's like making these bougie, expensive $2,000, $3,000 apartments that you have to rent out of. So yeah, I think the politicians really stepped up when it came to that. I don't know who exactly was involved, don't ask me, but yeah, I have seen a lot of that, because the reality of it is that a lot of people are leaving with the cost of living here. It's like rising really bad. Just a few days ago, I was at my local high school and I was talking to a teacher, and I had asked her, like, like, what's the population like? She's like, oh, we're at 500 right now.
Oh, dang.
And I was like, what?
That's small.
We were like 800 when we were there.
Yeah.
And she told me that the reason is the cost of living. People are leaving to like the Inland Empire. And I was like, that's insane. Like, not even the people who grew up here, who have so much history here, are able to even afford to stay here. So yeah, I think housing has been the one that I've definitely have seen, like, really people try and make a difference, because it's like our population is declining. It's crazy.
And also on top of that, like renter protections as well. Like, we are, which is unfortunate to say, that we are fortunate to be in LA, because we have some of the most progressive policy in the country, where there is no renter protections like this anywhere else. Because when people write, like, you're renting out a house or an apartment or something like that, there is a lot of ways that obviously landlords want to increase rent, because they want to make more money on you. Obviously, that's that's one of their things of how they're increasing their income. But then that makes it so difficult to like sustainably live there if like the next year your rent is increasing tremendously, where it's like, I haven't even made that much more this year. Like, how am I supposed to pay that? So it's incredible too that there are also renter protections that protect a lot of people who rent in our community, so that landlords aren't allowed to do that. They're not allowed to just jump tremendously. There's caps and there are things to protect people who have lived here for so long, so that people could continue to live here at an affordable and reasonable amount, especially with the rising cost of things. But yeah, I think some of the other things that I also was writing about, of course, is also environmental injustice. Our community is in the center of, 3-4 major freeways. I live across the street from one. And although it may feel like convenience to have entrances near you, there is a large impacts that being surrounded by freeways has on our health. The pollution, the exposure that we have to, trucks that are constantly passing by. And so it's all done strategically. Like, at what point in time, it wasn't like coincidental that Boyle Heights is going to be the crossing point of major different freeways. It was all strategic, because of different communities would not allow it to happen in their communities, because they knew the impacts that would have there. And of course, it was because people in our community were left to just kind of deal with a lot of these consequences, that now, no wonder our people in our community deal with some of the highest rates of asthma, of diabetes, right? All these different things, because of factors that are out of our control, that have been established here for quite a while. And a lot of these things, to help have access to, whether it be temporary solutions, but things nonetheless that can help us, whether it be access to free resources like air purifiers that the city gives out, or different things like that, to help with some of the impacts that we directly deal with. It is because of policies that help protect us at times, or give us more than what we currently have. And if we don't share what we need when it comes to education, or what we want for our street vendors and small businesses to survive, we need to say what we need here in order for it to ever exist, So it's incredible, though.
It is very
how much they
insane.
do control.
Because I think a lot about Hollenbeck Park, because I think to me Hollenbeck Park is like, I think it's a really unsafe park that I feel
for sure
comfortable going to. But I know that before they like cut through it with the freeway, it used to be a very beautiful, famous park in the community. And now it's like, well, now people are afraid to go, which is insane.
And it's like a joke at this point. Like, it's like a joke. Like, if I've ever posted about Hollenbeck Park, like if I'm running there, which I'm never running alone there, but if I am, it's like, damn, girl, you're safe. Like,
you're out there by yourself.
A joke. And it's so unfortunate, because it has sometimes people who are not from Boyle Heights comment, and they're like, wow, what a beautiful park.
I've seen so many influencers, like white influencers, are like, oh my God, let me introduce you to such a historic park. I'm like,
which it is historic, but it's so unfortunate that there's safety wise, unfortunately, the reality is seriously, there's a lot of things, unfortunate things that have happened at that park.
Yeah, really scary stuff.
Yeah. And so, but the only way we can ever make those green spaces that we do, which are already limited as they are, we don't have a ton of green spaces, is by sharing and making sure that we express that it is very important to us.
Issue, like even with the air purifiers, that was a recent legislation that passed.
Exactly.
Yeah, that you had to live within these certain zip codes to qualify for an air purifier. Yeah, because you got the freeway in your backyard.
Yeah, which I have one of those air purifiers now. Do you?
Yeah, I have two.
Yeah, they're so great.
They're generous with it,
and they're expensive. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have bought one.
Yeah, so they're like $400. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's like, the way we get it is by advocating for some of these things. And there are a ton of other things too. I know we have some examples too that Ixchel was also researching about different people who have sat in seats in government who have helped move forward some of the ways or things that we want. And also on the flip side, some who have not advocated for us. And so, anything you want to share that you learned from also people who have done stuff?
Yeah, just to preface it, you will see my phone pop up a little bit more just because I want to make sure I have accurate information. But the biggest one is Mark Gonzalez. So he is representative of District 54, which is our district. So he is a politician up in Sacramento, making bills and laws for our own community. And I know recently what his biggest target has been addressing food insecurity.
Nice,
so he was able to provide, I don't know the exact number, but I think it might have been like $1.5 million to like a local nonprofit to hope to support folks with like having access to fresh produce. So I know there's many local organizations, like on 2 set days of the week, people get in line and they come grab their food.
Yeah.
So things like that, right? Because we've talked about it in the last episode when we were talking about access to free food, how expensive the cost of living is. So those are things that are, Mark grew up in this community. I think he's from Lincoln Heights. I might be wrong, but so he knows the impacts and how much our community is really struggling to, afford the cost of living.
And what could make a difference.
Exactly. Yeah. And I know he's also introduced the street medicine bill. So that one is specifically supporting our in-house community here in Boyle Heights. So making sure that they have access to medical care regardless of, if they have documentation and things. So that is another big win for us because there's so many things that we see in our local spaces. Yeah. And then also Maria Elena Durazo, for those that don't know, she is currently serving as our state senate for District 26?
Yeah, 26.
26. Yeah. So her seat is up right now. And she's done a lot of cool stuff. I know that her parents had a lot of history in like the movement. What was it with the, oh my God. I don't want to say Cesar Chavez. Anyways,
farm workers movement.
The farm workers movement. Yes, she has been really involved in that.
Could have put that in there.
No. That was funny. So I know that she has secured $400 million for the renovation of Self-Help Graphics. So of those of you who have seen it on First Street, they are completely renovating their building. So those efforts were because she saw that community space, needed a little bit more support. So that's also been cool to see.
Yeah.
And she is also behind the tenant protection of immigrant families. So obviously she knows folks in the community who have been impacted and has made that a priority. But so she has just been making sure that we also have transit-oriented housing developments. Like right now, the biggest bill that passed is building vertically.
Yeah.
Because there's so many heavy regulations on like how or where you can build in LA. So now we're going to be seeing more housing near public transportation spaces.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and see, these are really good examples of things that people who come from our communities, who are representative of who we are, although no one will ever be perfect.
Yeah.
And it is true. Without these people, and if we had other people in these seats who are not from the community or do not understand the things and needs that we have, or don't have our best interest in mind, we would then not have a lot of these things that sometimes we take for granted in our everyday lives. Like sometimes we don't question, like, why do we have this? Or why do we get to have these air purifiers? Like, I don't know where it actually came from if I'm thinking about it. Or why is there new housing being built? Where is that coming from? Why did that happen? Was it because of advocacy of people, fighting and wanting it, right? So sometimes I feel like we don't question the everyday things that we actually sometimes get. And a lot of it is out of our own ability to, push them forward and advocate for them. Obviously, we don't always win. And unfortunately, that's the reality, the unfortunate reality. But without us doing anything, nothing would then change, you know?
Yeah.
So, with that said, we did want to talk about, because we understand how complex these systems are and how overwhelming the government is to understand, because there's so many things you're voting for. There's so many different seats. You're trying to understand what they directly impact. You're trying to understand who to trust, what sources are reliable. It's so confusing and it's overwhelming that a lot of the times I think I don't know about you, but in the past, vote for whatever name feels most familiar, or don't do it at all because you're like, I don't, it's too much for me. Yeah. So we also want to share a little bit about, so you understand who's currently running for what we are officially by tomorrow have our ability to vote on. And then from there, what will then move forward with the November election, and talk about the different things that we're using in our current like structures of voting, and what we've learned are like the easiest ways to go about that. Okay, and so to give you a basic overview of, like we said, what to expect right now in the election, what it is, who we're able to vote for here in District 26. So the June 2nd election, that's the deadline for the primary election. This is where there are many candidates running for all different positions. And whoever the top two people are in this June election will move forward to the November election. So it's not over. Again, if you have the chance to vote in the next day, please do. And if you don't, well, now you know, with the two people who come out of the race this time around, you can still vote on and contribute and be a part of for the November election, because that is the one that's the official final election that we then vote into government to represent our district. So every district has different things that they're voting for, depending on what directly impacts you. So I know that we have the governor running. We also have the mayor of LA seat open, which actually I just learned about this when I was doing some research. I thought it was so funny. I was trying to understand like what cities specifically obviously can vote for LA mayor. Obviously it's the city of LA, but sometimes I get confused with the county and the city of LA. And because some of these like areas are so close to us, right? Like Montebello, for example, Montebello, I was thinking about them, and they actually can't vote for city mayor, which I thought was funny because Reddit, there was like a bunch of comments about like, yeah, like they can't vote. They think they can, but they can't. It's so dumb, but
well, they have their own local.
They do, yeah. But it's even as specific as that. You might think Montebello is like our next door neighbors, but they actually don't get to vote in that. So every ballot looks different.
And East LA can vote either.
East LA can't either
because they're unincorporated.
Yeah. So it is very specific to who has actual power to vote in certain places. So as well as the mayor, we also have our city council. There's also the LUSD board, the county supervisor, and the state senators that we're voting on. And there's a couple more things, but those are some of the ones to name because there's a lot of things that you can vote for. And some of the issues that affect us directly that these different people control are things that we've talked about, like housing affordability and gentrification, public transportation and accessibility to it, public safety and community resources, education funding and student support, and environmental justice and pollution in neighborhoods near freeways, such as ours. So those are some pretty hefty things that they will have a say in, that we definitely want to elect people who actually have values and priorities that fall into those groups that directly affect our community. And so, that's a little bit about who the different positions are, who you might help get into a position. So I think we wanted to start with like, what are some of the ways that you can start to understand who to vote for, how to research folks? What have you done, obviously, to keep it as simple as possible for people who it feels like complex and overwhelming?
I think, the voter ballot is something we've talked about.
Great start.
So a lot of you probably have gotten that mailed already to your homes. But if not, you can also look like any of the positions that we listed, like who is running for this. So typically, I think right now for the mayor election, there's a good chunk of folks. So what I typically like to do is I'm a social media gal, is I'll go on their social media, I'll kind of see what they have been currently advocating for, just to get a sense of like their current policy. But I also look into like where they have experience before. So like, what were they doing right before this job? Were they already working in local politics? If so,
does it actually make sense why they are running for this?
Right? Like what is your background? Because I know there's some folks that maybe have a different trajectory. It is not to say that, you can't do it, but But I think for me, at least, that's really important to know that like this person has fundamentally been working for the needs of our community.
And it was intentional.
Exactly. Right. It wasn't just like, oh, I want to run for this because I have a lot of money. So I think that's really important to me. Also, looking at currently like the people who have the seat and looking at what they were doing, right? Because I know a few folks are running up again. And so, you know, they had their chance, right? They had their chance. They had their time to demonstrate who they were fundamentally. And if, you know, it wasn't my cup of tea, then I'm going to choose to decide to vote for somebody else who's really out there doing the work. So yeah, I would say that for sure. But yeah, also be wary of things because there is a lot of, you're going to find good and bad from every politician. Like we were saying, like not everybody's perfect. And, you know, obviously their opposers are going to make propaganda videos of like them doing this and them doing that. So just take everything with a grain of salt when it comes to doing your research.
Well, I think that's a great point because I think propaganda is so easy to just like, you see it and you believe it because you're like, well, yeah, this is on TV. It should be legit. But a lot of the times it's obviously by opposing teams that are putting in millions of dollars to promote these on our TVs. And so because of that, I try not to let like propaganda be at the forefront of what affects me because I've gotten a bunch of, for state senator, Sarah Hernandez.
Good or bad?
Good about her, but I'm not voting for her. She's not it for me. But these ads make her look so great. She's getting community members to say all these amazing things that she's doing for us. And then that goes into the second point of making sure that you don't trust those propaganda ads alone and you actually see and think about, which I thought was a great point brought up in a forum that I was listening to. How do you think you're seeing these ads? Like when you get things in the mail, you get it from, let's say I just got one this morning from Karen Bass, from Sarah Hernandez, forgetting who else. And I'm like, you have to question, how do they have the ability to give me these ads and be in front of the TV so often? This comes from then funding. Mm-hmm. And so a big key way to see and really feel like if people are living true to what they're talking about in their race is where the funding is coming from. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of the times grassroots candidates do not have the funds to get on your TV screen, to print these. You might think it's as simple as just like a something, vote for me, whatever in the mail. But I just found out from one of the state senators that I am voting for that just to send out a blast text message to community members costs thousands of dollars.
Yeah.
Just one text to one person, like it's ridiculous. And so if you think about how is, Karen Bass on my TV screen, well, she probably has a big budget. And where's that budget coming from? Probably from corporations and organizations that are sort of hypocritical to what you would imagine you would put your money into and support, right? And so that's the same thing for Sarah Hernandez, where I'm just like, she really acts like she's like all about the people, but then she's actually getting a bunch of funds from places that I'm like, that's sort of ironic, isn't it?
Yeah, and she also works for a law firm that is supported Trump in the past.
Yeah, so looking at the funding is really, really essential because that's going to tell you a lot about where they get their money.
Yeah.
And it's also a really good point to think about when it comes to funding. The reason a lot of the times we question, like, why did this representative vote for that bill? That doesn't make sense. Why would they do that? A lot of the times it's because they're tied to the funding that they accepted. Mm-hmm. So they have to vote that way, right? They have to vote the way of whatever it be that organization, whether it's, I don't know, a gas company they took money from, they have to vote the way in the benefit of them, or whether it be Uber or something, because they got a ton of money from them. They're sort of in that bind. We don't want candidates to put themselves in that fucking bind. We want candidates to have full control because the money they got from is from the people and people who are supporting them. So they don't have any ties or forced, positions to be in, and so funding is a large thing you should look at.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And the only other thing I would say that I also like to look at is endorsements. Mm-hmm. What organizations are endorsing them, especially organizations that you trust. You'll see a lot of candidates will post like, oh, I just got endorsed by this org or this one or this candidate. Do you trust those other organizations or candidates? Because they have faith in that person. So sometimes if you feel like you don't know how to pick or what way to go, a lot of the times when I'm stuck or feel like I'm getting a lot of mixed information on the internet, I look at people that I trust and who they're supporting, especially local organizations that I really like here in Boyle Heights, or people who I know grew up here, who know a lot more about these representatives and have worked there. And I try to put my faith a lot too in like the people who are backing them up.
Yeah. People who are doing
exactly
work.
Yeah. So those are some good ways.
Yeah. And I think like lastly is just also seeing like what they're doing with their time, right? Because they this is the perfect time for them to, really put their names out there, especially for folks that maybe don't have a lot of funding.
Yeah.
Like, are they going to community spaces where the people that they're going to represent are going to be there, right? Are they getting to know our community members? So yeah, like looking at like if they're going to local orgs within your community, I think is also really important. Because sometimes these folks don't even fucking live here and they're running for like positions and representing people that they don't even know. So yeah, just looking into that. But I think moral of the story is just take everything with a grain of salt, because
that you see and that you consume.
Yeah.
And also to your point about like seeing where they spend their time, also seeing if they've spent time in those places or community orgs or whatever prior to them running, because a lot of the times too, people are going to come around when it's convenient to them. So you also want to see where have they already been involved? What boards have they sat on because they wanted to volunteer for them for years, or what orgs are they involved in because they just love going there. And so that too is super important to take into consideration, because they all come around and want you once it's convenient, the last thing.
So what happens next?
No, the watch interviews, debates, town halls. The last thing I'll say, actually, that we actually went to a forum recently for the state senators running, is definitely go to community forums. They host them in different places where they have multiple candidates that you can listen to all in one. Hear what they say on the spot. Ask them questions that you are really curious about so that you get to hear from them directly. Or there's also debates that happen, right, depending on what sort of role they're running for. But there will be a lot of opportunity to do that coming into the following months of November, probably even more, if anything. So all in all, this is your friendly reminder to please make sure to remember, even if you don't have the chance to vote this June election, but if you do, please do. You literally have a day. All you got to do is drop it off at your ballot. If you do, great. And know that after this June election, the 2 final candidates from each of these positions move forward and run for the November election, the one that makes the final decisions of who's going to be taking those seats to represent our district. So definitely continue to stay involved. See the different ways that feel like make sense for you to make the most educated decisions and have a say in the community and what and how and who will impact the direct policies that affect our everyday lives. Well, for our fun activity to close it out, we're going to have fun with it, make it lighthearted about policies that we would, if there was no limit to budget and there was no other competing policies to have to consider, what would be like the coolest thing you would want a candidate to like implement in Boyle Heights if it was possible?
If it were possible, I would love for people to receive like some sort of like monthly stipend to help families, whether it's with like rent, utilities.
Oh, so they could use it however they want.
However they would like. Okay, nice. I would love to see like a monthly stipend for a lot of our community members. Yeah, because it's like they could use it for that, or even if they can't, maybe they get to experience something they never had the privilege to.
That's a very thoughtful one. What about a lighthearted one? I don't think a silly one. What's something that you wish was like silly we had, or you go.
I'll go after.
Okay. My first one that's more on the quote unquote like serious, like this would be sick side would be that there was a mandatory yearly financial literacy and cooking classes every year that you had to do. And like everyone in the neighborhood had to do it, because I think it would keep people a lot more in check and aware and updated with like what's going on. So I think those would be super cool and super important, because the last time you have like mandatory financial literacy classes is in high school. And it's only one. So I feel like it would be cool to have like a yearly class where like, oh shit, that's true. Like, let me do about that. Or this is what's happening.
Like a nutritional class.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. Exactly.
Yeah. I'm trying so hard to keep them lighthearted, and I don't know if that's
something silly.
Wait. Okay. I would love to see, like, I know Zoran Mamdani is doing this in New York, but government funded like grocery stores, like mercaditos.
Yeah.
Where, wait, I'm going to add a little bit of a dash to it, where, you know, HelloFresh, how they prepare like their pre-made meals. Yeah. I wish they had that where like people could get it at a discounted price at a store like that, where it makes it easier for them to want to cook at home and eat more nutritionally good things that are good for your body. Like, I would love to see that, because it's like, we talk about like the privilege it is to have time to cook, and it's like that would make that a little bit more easier for families. I would love to see something like that.
That's a great one.
Put me in office.
I think, because the other one that I was thinking about was how, like, in Europe they have like siesta time, and I think it would be cool if we had siesta time here in Boyle Heights, where like everyone could just relax for 2 hours in the middle of the workday, and like didn't affect your income and didn't affect anything. We could just like take care of yourself and rest for a little bit. It was required.
I would love that so much.
Siesta time.
Siesta time. Yeah. And I think my last one would have to be that there be more green spaces where it is a mandatory inner child healing fun picnic game. Like twice a month or something.
Damn, bi-weekly.
Where people can pull up and just like enjoy and be silly and be whimsical.
Yeah.
That would be super cute.
I love that. Okay, I have one more then for the third. I think this would be super cool that actually one of my neighbors told me about. I wish it was like mandatory that every block had certain funding to host a block party every year. And like, you get to know your neighbors that way. That's and like, cute. You get to close down the street. You get to like, you have a budget for it, and you get to do a community event together and get to know each other more. And I think that would be really cool.
That's so fucking cool. That's really cute.
Yeah, it would be fun. That. Yeah. And now to officially close out the episode, we're going to do our small business shout out of the week. Who are you shouting out this week?
I am shouting out Espacio 1839.
Yes.
Because they always come in handy when I need a gift. And especially for like friends that live in like different parts of the city, I know that they can always receive a very meaningful gift from Boyle Heights that they probably wouldn't have access to.
I love that. Oh, cute. Yeah. Cute. Love Espacio. I am shouting out, their name is quite literally Tamales y Pozole. And they sell tamales y pozole.
Whoa.
I know. Wow. Crazy. They sell at the Mercado Night Market, the Mercadito Night Market. Yeah. Oh my God. Those tamales, they are fighting for like top pick right now. Whoa. Like, they were so good. And yeah, they're a little expensive, but it was so good. The pozole was so good. So shout out to them. You can find them at the Mercadito Night Market on Fridays and Saturdays from like 6 p.m. to midnight. And they were amazing.
I need to go.
Yeah, it's cute. Really good food there. They have pasta, they have wings, they have all the, esquite, elote, all that stuff. And they're so sweet, those people, actually. I love them. But yeah, that's what I'm going to shout out. And what is your wellness tip to folks this week?
My wellness tip to folks is to honor your sleep. I have not been doing that, and I have been saying that it is my biggest struggle, but I've been going to sleep every day at like 12.
Oh, yeah.
I know.
I feel you though. I've been sleeping later too.
Yeah, I've been struggling a lot with like, it's been affecting my days and my mornings. So yeah, I think just throw the shit away. Girl. Throw the shit away.
Yeah, I was going to say, what is it? Is it like it's your mind, or is it that?
It's make sure this and my anxiety. Because when I put this away, but I think it's because I'm using it right before I go to bed. Yeah, my mind's so active, so it like fucks with me.
You don't have a time limit?
I do.
But you don't have someone else that controls the code? Give it to me.
Like my parents?
Like me. Jen would do that for me.
Wait, what?
She would have the code to unlock the time. I wouldn't.
You can do that. Yeah, bro, it's giving parental control.
Yeah, it's friend control. And like, I know the code, you don't know the code, and you can't unlock it.
Yeah, we might have to do that.
Yeah, that was the only way I could. When Jen did it, it was the only way I could, because of course I'm gonna unlock it. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna have more time.
I fucking downloaded Screen Zen because Brie told me to.
What does it do?
It's an extra block. So you can basically give it, it's like you can only check social media 6 times. And in those 6 times, it's going to be 15 minutes. But so before, when you click unlock, it doesn't just unlock, it like does a countdown. So you can set, like, it can be like a minute countdown. So it just like delays and delays. And I did it, but right now, you know what? Like, sometimes, here's the thing too, because sometimes we need it for social media and stuff that like, I'm like, fuck. And then I end up getting lost in it. But we might have go in there, you kind of go crazy. Yeah. And then I'm like, fuck you guys, because you're doing this strategically. Yeah. But you might have to.
It worked for me so well, because it was like, I literally didn't know the number. So it's like, what do I do? And if I actually needed it, it was someone that I know would give it to me.
Okay.
You know?
That's if so it was bad.
Absolutely. Yeah. But like, yeah, it helps me. That's when it comes to that when if you have to.
I'm addicted.
But that's a great suggestion. Prioritize your sleep. Try to put the phone down somewhere you can't reach it for sure. Yeah. My wellness tip for everyone is to sort of in the same theme of what I talked about early on, but to be grateful for your body and what it can do today, because it'll never be stronger than it was today, because every day that passes, your body changes, everything changes. And so appreciate the body you have today, because it'll never feel the same, be the same. And so it's just so important that we're, however old you are, for us in our mid-20s now, like it's so important. I knew she was gonna do that. It's like, it's gonna be so different, in 10 years. And so you have to appreciate what your body is capable of today. And I'm definitely, girl, once I'm off of this boot,
you won't see her. She's going to be running.
You won't see me again. Yeah. Anyways,
that's hilarious. Well, thank you so much for being here and sharing space with us again. We really hope that this podcast was a little bit more informative today, and that it really inspires you all to go out there and vote, show your support for people who are running and looking to represent our community. And thank you again. So if it spoke to you, feel free to share it to your primas, your homegirls, your mother, your dad, anyone who might resonate with it.
Healing is super personal, but it's also very collective. So we're always very grateful to be doing this with you all. So wherever you're listening to, please make sure to subscribe to continue to allow us to do the work that we do on YouTube, on Spotify, and make sure to follow us on Instagram or on TikTok.
Hasta la próxima, con mucho amor.